Hi, English 8, and welcome. We are now about to begin a new project called Critical Lenses. So anytime we think of the word critical, you might use it as a sentence like, my parents are being so critical on me, or so critical means to judge, and it means to judge through a specific perspective, particularly when we're talking about English literature. A lot of times there are very distinct gender roles, and stereotypes that can be found. So that is exactly what we are going to be doing for this project. Is we're going to read a book and we're going to analyze how gender roles and stereotypes affect the development of your character. So if you think about really almost absolutely any story that you've ever read, or even a TV show that you've watched, typically with the standard hero's journey, if we look at Star Wars. Luke Skywalker starts out in the middle of nowhere. He has a calling. He goes on a quest. He has a mentor or a guide, and he learns, and then he overcomes evil, and then there's some type of resolution. And we find that very similar pattern in many, many stories. And within that, and although we don't know that, there are unwritten rules as to how men and women are supposed to react. So again, that's what we're going to take a look of. So what we're going to do is first things first, is you're going to look at a couple articles and find some background information about gender roles and how they've changed over the years. Then, finally what we're going to do is we're going to dig into the text of the book that you're reading, and we're going to work together in those literature circles to kind of share those ideas. Right now, what I want to do very quickly is I want to show you just what I mean by stereotyping and gender roles. So if you look at this PowerPoint, these are actual advertisements that have been made, and they reflect American society. So here we see a advertisement for Chase and Born coffee. All right, if your husband ever finds out that you're not using store tested for fresher coffee. All right, so this was probably made in the 1950s, but this was a perfectly acceptable advertisement in the 1950s. Imagine if we tried to do that today. Right? Here is a Del Monte ketchup. All right, you mean a woman can open it. So, and again, here's another gender stereotype that we use. Now, what is that stereotype? Would probably be that women are physically not as strong as men. All right, so they're saying it's so easy to open that even a woman can do it. And again, this probably came from the 1960s. Here is a more modern one. All right, so what kind of stereotypes do we see? All right, first of all, you have the tall blonde model who's very skinny, and you have the men behind them who she's knocking down dead, right? So, it's that stereotype that men are very single-minded. They have one thing in mind, and that's to find a beautiful woman, right? All right, so here's one of a woman behind a steering wheel from the 1960s. It says the Mini Automatic for simpler driving. So what kind of stereotypes do you think are being portrayed in this? And if you kind of thought to yourself, well, it's that women aren't very smart, then that's exactly that same stereotype, is that, there's been a long tradition that women can't drive as well as men. All right. Here's a relatively newer one. Men never listen, still, but it's nice to know they can. So this is actually an advertisement for hearing aids. Right, so what's the general stereotype? Is that men don't listen to what women are saying. They just kind of gloss over it. Right. Here's one from the 1980s. Is your face paying for the price of success? So here you have a young, attractive mother who is, carrying a briefcase going to work with their child in hand. So, what is the stereotype? What's the gender role there? Is a lot of people would say that it's particularly at this time and in the early 80s is really when women started to enter the workforce in bigger numbers, particularly at executive positions or executive levels. So, it's kind of asking, is it possible to do both? Is it possible to raise a family and be successful at work? And the last one, king of his castle, right? So, and I have no idea what this advertisement is for, but I do know that, it's pretty explicit in the fact that it's saying that that the men are the king of the household, right? So those are just a couple examples of stereotypes that we might not even realize that we grow up in, and we might not realize that we see on a daily basis. So, this is actually one of my favorite assignments. This is a really interesting, thought-provoking unit. So I'm excited that you are going to get this opportunity to do this, and I will follow up with more specifics as to what you're going to be doing for each of the projects or each of the checkpoints. So, all right, thanks. Bye-bye.